Hey guys, it's Jessica from Audacity, and I'm super excited because this is Family's first collab. I am here with Dr. Carlos Wise. Yes, we have the same last name because he's my dad. Hi, Daddy.
Baby.
We are here to educate everybody. We are now at the end of Black History Month, and one of the things that this pandemic has really tricked a lot of us into thinking is that the coronavirus was a great equalizer, when in fact, it continues to show the holes, particularly in the healthcare system when it comes to Black and Brown people. And we're going to talk about it today because we're going to stress the importance in the education of getting the COVID vaccine. This is not here to tell y'all what to do. We're not saying like, you have to get the vaccine because we understand that there are certain concerns around it, but we are here to talk about it, educate it on it. That way you can make the best decision for yourself and your family and your body. So, Dad, tell us a little bit about your background as a doctor.
Good morning. So I'm a family physician. I'm board certified in family medicine. So I'm not a public health doctor or an infectious disease doctor, although I've spent about 15 years of my career actually working with the public health department here locally. In fact, I was the chairman of the board for the public health department for 10 years, having just recently stepped down from that. But, my level of expertise when it comes to community health and population health and infectious disease, pandemics and things like that, I'm not Dr. Fauci or Dr. Walensky. But I do treat people with coronavirus in the emergency department. That's kind of my background there.
Yeah. He's also a Morehouse man, you guys. My dad got his MD at Morehouse School of Medicine here in our hometown, Atlanta. And he is also the CMO of the VA in Columbus, Georgia. And he served in our United States military as a flight surgeon. So he didn't see it all and did it all one way or another. He can birth your baby or he can handle that hospice care for you. So he's all around doc for sure. Okay, so Dad, like, can you you're vaccinated right now? Yes, you're fully vaccinated.
Yes, I've had both doses of the Moderna vaccine.
How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I feel good. The first dose, honestly, nothing I really was almost asymptomatic with the first dose. But with the second dose, I did have about 24 hours of fatigue, body aches, a little bit of headache, but the overwhelming symptom was just the fatigue.
Why does that happen?
Energy.
Why does that happen when you get the second dose?
I think because you're already primed now from the first dose. So the immune response is just more quick and more more severe. So I think that's the reason.
Okay. So is that normal? Is that something that people
That's
can
normal.
expect if they get it? And
Yeah.
so if you get your
Anecdotally, Jess, what I've seen though is people who actually already had coronavirus, the disease,
yeah.
they didn't get this severe, reaction to the first or second dose of the vaccine. Why? Because they've already mounted that extreme immune response. So their body didn't have to do it from scratch.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but for those of us who really have never seen the virus, when we got the second dose, we had that more severe reaction.
Oh, like your body's like attacking it almost. Like it's like, is that what
Correct.
it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you get symptoms after you have your second dose, just like, should you just not panic? Should you take a sick day? Like, what do you do if you start feeling like just some slight symptoms, like what you mentioned?
You should not panic, but you should anticipate that
Okay.
if you've not had the disease. So I actually took a sick day the day after my second dose. So I
Hmm.
actually worked the same day, though. I got the dose like maybe, 10 o'clock in the morning. I was able to work all day, even able to come home and exercise at the end of the day.
Okay.
But about maybe 3 a.m. that night, I began to experience the symptoms. Again, because, my immune system already had a clue of what this virus looks like. So when it saw it the second time, it was ready for it. It hit it hard to keep me from getting the disease.
Okay, good. All right. So, what would you say the difference is, if there is any, between the available shots? I know Johnson and Johnson's one dose shot just got approved the other day by the FDA. Is one better than the other, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson and Johnson? I know a lot of people are concerned. I even was concerned about Johnson and Johnson, considering their baby powder history. I was like, well, if I survive Johnson and Johnson baby powder, I don't know if I can survive their shot too.
I,
But what
I
do you say
think you
about those concerns?
I think you should not be concerned. Johnson and Johnson actually tested their vaccine uh, more than the two that came out first. Yeah, their test population was over 45,000 people. It was done, I think, over 3 continents, and I don't know how many countries that they tested their vaccine on. And they're also using a traditional vaccine technology where they basically use an actual adenovirus vector
What does
for
that
their
mean?
vaccine. A cold virus vector, where part of the DNA of the coronavirus is
Hmm.
embedded in a traditional cold virus that
Hmm.
we already know, that we've all already been exposed to. And so the technology is a traditional technology that most vaccines that we already get are based on.
Okay.
Whereas with the vaccine that I got, the Moderna vaccine and also the Pfizer vaccine, those are very new technologies. They're not really new technologies, but we don't have vaccines before this vaccine based on that technology.
Hmm.
Technology has been around 20, 30 years, but we have not actually used that technology to make vaccines before the COVID vaccine. Yeah, so this is a brand new thing. So that's another reason to not worry, not
Okay.
be concerned about the Johnson and Johnson somehow, uh, being more dangerous than the other two. They're all very safe. Um,
Okay.
yeah, they're all very safe, and yeah, that's it.
What would you say of people who are concerned that, like, even though, yes, like, it's in the testing, it's in this, like, we don't know, like, anybody who has the long-term side effects concern, which we haven't seen yet, obviously, because
Right.
it's a new vaccine. What would you say to maybe, how one could settle with that concern? Is there like a place where we can do research on the vaccines? Like, does Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson and Johnson have their study available on public record?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just research those studies that led to the approval of the vaccine, um, just by typing in the name of the vaccine. It'll
Hmm.
bring up the company name and the vaccine, and then if you understand what you're reading, you can read that data for yourself. But probably a better way to understand the data would be to just read about it on the CDC website. And I understand the CDC has lost a lot of credibility under the previous administration, politicizing the virus and the treatment of this virus. But those are some of the smartest people in the world over there at the CDC, and they've been unmuzzled now. They can tell the truth now about what's going on, and so I think the CDC is a place where you can look to for for reliable information that you can actually trust.
What are some other ways that you think people can rebuild their trust in science? Obviously, like, there's always been distrust in powerful systems of any kind where you can't really see what's going on inside. But particularly with science, particularly with Black and Brown community, where science has not always been very kind to us, to say the very least. What would you say to people who are genuinely, afraid of something like this? And they're like, well, I don't want to be the first person to get the vaccine because, they're going to try to give it to Black people first. And we've heard this in our own communities many a time. What would you
In our
say
own
to
family.
settle that? In our
In
family,
our own
yeah.
family.
In our
Very
own family.
smart people in our family, highly
Yeah.
educated, smart people,
Yeah.
doctors, engineers,
Yeah.
attorneys
It's
in our
like,
family.
it's interesting because, the doubts around this vaccine are not just from what we usually call like these crazy, like anti-vaxxers out in California who want to cure everything with granola and essential oils. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's all like people who are like, yeah, I have my flu vaccine, I have my chickenpox vaccine, blah, blah, blah. But people are very like afraid of this new vaccine. And, as we know, people tend to be afraid of things that are new or things that they don't understand. How can we settle with that? And because the only way it seems that we're going to get out of this is if we go ahead and
Just to
trust and
vaccinate
hope
our way out of
with
it.
the vaccine. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I would say is to acknowledge the legitimacy of those concerns. They are valid. Black and brown people have been treated so badly by the healthcare system for generations. I think of Henrietta Lacks, the lady who had cervical cancer. And to this day, in the 90s, I was in medical school at Morehouse School of Medicine, only to discover in the 90s, that the HeLa cells that we always spoke about in our lessons were actually, the eternal or immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks's cervical cancer that her family was never compensated for. Her permission to use her cell for research was never acquired. And that's just one of many occurrences in the healthcare system where we've been mistreated and shortchanged and sort of overlooked and not
used.
And used. Yeah, and used. So the concerns that we have as a group, are valid. And so I'd start always when I talk to my patients, because I have to have this conversation literally on a daily basis. I always start with just acknowledging that I understand your concerns are valid. You are not wrong to question people's intent and people's motive when it comes to dealing with us in the healthcare system. But now the next thing is we have to just, be realistic about the risk of the disease versus the risk of the virus, of the vaccine. The risk of the vaccine, at least in the short term, are well known. They're well documented. The risk of the disease is also well known. It's horrible. The risk of of having a heart attack or stroke, all the vasculopathies that come with DVTs and pulmonary emboli, all these risks, the risk of throwing emboli to your kidneys and ending up with kidney failure, the risk of having the residual of a stroke down the line. One of our cousins had an aneurysm that was most likely associated with her having COVID. She had COVID, and then shortly after that had an aneurysm because COVID attacks the vessels as well. And so, and she's a young woman now in her 40s and neurologically devastated. So we know these risks of this virus. we know that the untoward effects of this virus may last for years and years and years, and you may never recover from them. I take care of a fireman right now who's only 50 years old. Now, you know, firemen, they're in very good shape. This
Hmm.
guy was like, extremely fit, no risk
Yeah.
factors whatsoever. He got COVID, and now he has congestive heart failure with, yeah, on oxygen and all this stuff
Hmm.
because he has severe congestive heart failure. And yeah, so this is so the what I would say is that the risk of the disease is far worse
The risk of
than
the vaccine.
any risk that of the vaccine that we know of.
Yeah.
So the balance is tipped in favor
Hmm.
of the vaccine.
Okay. That makes sense. I understand that. So obviously, some of us are still waiting our turn to get the vaccine, right? And therefore, we have to continue like social distancing, wearing our mask, and so on until we are next in line, basically.
Right.
So, what is it? What happens after the vaccine? Because a lot of people talk about like, what happens, like, okay, you got to do this, until you're vaccinated. And then, the average person probably thinks that after they're vaccinated, they can just go buck wild,
They
right?
can go back
Like,
to the movies.
yeah, we can
They
go
can
back to
go
the
back to the
movies, we
bar.
can go back to the club, like this is what people are feeling. And I'm not even gonna lie, like there are definitely times where I'm like, please vaccinate me so I can get on a plane and I can go like and do fun stuff. And I
And I
recognize
think
because you're my dad that I can't do that.
I think after enough people are vaccinated, 75, 80% of the population, we can get back on
Yeah.
airplane and not worry. But even then, probably for the next couple years, when you get into a small closed inside space, you probably still need to wear your mask.
Okay.
You probably still you can go back to the movies after 75 or 80% of the people have been vaccinated. I think we're getting close to about 20%
Hmm.
population vaccinated at this point.
Yeah. Last time I checked, I think
We're
about
getting
65
close to that
million been
number.
vaccinated. Mhm.
So as we get more and more people vaccinated, we can go back to something that resembles normal. But for indoor activities in a closed small space like an airplane or a club, um, I would say you probably should be wearing your mask probably for the next year or two.
Okay.
And I don't think coronavirus is ever going to go away completely, but I think we will learn to live with coronavirus like we've learned to live with flu.
Mm.
You,
Okay.
you get a vaccine against flu every year, and if most people get it, we don't have these huge events where you have hundreds of thousands of people dying from flu every year.
Mhm.
But we did once.
We
We
did.
did have hundreds of thousands of people dying from flu every year before.
And the
But
flu was almost the next
yeah,
pandemic.
we get vaccinated
Yeah.
from flu now, and so we see maybe 10 or 20,000 people die a year from flu. Yeah. So it's a big difference. So I think coronavirus is likely to be that kind of story because coronaviruses have always been here. Coronaviruses, um, there are several varieties of coronavirus that that have been here forever. If you look on your Lysol can, it talks about it kills coronavirus. Why?
Yeah.
Because we've always known about coronavirus, but not this variety of coronavirus. This is a novel or new
Mm.
coronavirus, a more exploitive version of it.
Is that why it's killed more people and thus
Yeah,
become our new pandemic?
yeah,
Okay.
why?
That's crazy. I didn't
Yeah.
even know about coronavirus until I think like December of 2019. And, I think I was definitely one of those people who was like, oh, okay, like, it's going to be like Ebola. It's going to be like H1N1. Like, it's that country's problem. Like,
And
but
I just knew it wasn't.
yeah,
And you remember us talking about it. I just knew it was far worse than that.
yeah. And this before we put two and two together about being like a respiratory disease, even like
Mhm.
it was, it's
So, I was one of the late adapters to the idea that it just sort of spreads through the air, which it
same.
does,
Yeah.
right?
It just seems so
Um,
extreme, right? He was like, nah, come
just
on,
seems
guys.
so extreme,
Like, what
I
do you mean
really
sprays
thought
in
that
the
you
air?
really had to get close to somebody and walk into their, spit, plume
Yeah,
or
like
whatever.
what's a respiratory droplet? Like, what
A
the hell is that?
respiratory droplet.
What is
But
that?
but it's really far worse than that.
Yeah.
It's really far worse than that. So a lot more contagious than that. And these new strains, this
Hmm.
British variant and the South African variant, even more so. So it's even more important to keep your foot on the gas right now. Keep
Okay.
wearing your mask. Keep social distancing. Um, if you want to get together with a small group of friends, um, you know, with good ventilation, who are all also vaccinated, that's probably okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably okay. But if you start introducing people who are not vaccinated, that's that's the wrong move. And even a small group of friends who are all vaccinated, there is a risk, even in that instance. Although the risk is really tiny. I'll talk about the numbers in just a second.
Okay.
The risk is really tiny, but there is a risk that one of those people could still be carrying coronavirus that doesn't make them sick, but they can still spread it to someone else. That
So
doesn't
this
make them
virus can
sick because
bounce off
they're
people.
vaccinated. But you
It
can
can.
carry it before your body has a chance to neutralize that virus. When and you there's still a small window of time that you can still spread it.
Oh, so okay,
Yeah,
even if you're vaccinated, the way
even if you're
vaccinations
vaccinated.
work, like the virus can come at you and then your body kicks it out, basically. Is that what it's
Correct.
saying?
That's what
Okay.
happens.
And depending on whether or not it's been kicked out in time is how you can spread it. Like you can bounce it basically as someone.
That's right.
Is that with any virus? Like, can you do that with the flu too?
That's
Or
that's even with the flu virus. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my point is we still have to be careful, even
Okay.
when we're vaccinated, because we can still be vectors of transmission to others,
Hmm.
even though we don't get sick from it.
Hmm.
We can
Kind of
still
like how
transmit to others.
kind of like with the flu, it's like, yeah, like I got my flu shot, but I'm still gonna wash my hands before I go jump into this, like, spread of food that you put out for me, dear host friend. Like,
That's
is
right.
that how that works? Okay.
Yeah. It's
All right.
probably a few days time. Like I'm just guessing. I don't know this for sure. It's probably a few days time that your body, your own immune system will neutralize that virus that you've been exposed to, which is not time to make you sick, right?
Hmm.
But it is still time for you to give it to someone else. So it's just important to keep it up, keep up, keep up the mitigation strategies, uh,
Yeah.
even while we're all getting vaccinated.
Okay. So bottom line is, even if you get the COVID vaccine, you still need to continue to wear your mask in public places and try to keep gatherings outdoors and small if you
And
can.
small, and with other people who are also
We're also
vaccinated.
vaccinated. Would it be viable to ask people to just take negative COVID tests before they arrive to the event?
Well, that is one thing that will help some, but just consider, the um, consider that those negative tests could be falsely negative, and those
Mm,
people
okay.
could still uh, harbor COVID, and they haven't had an opportunity to become sick yet. They're still
Mhm.
asymptomatic.
When
Uh,
is the right time to take a COVID test to make sure you're negative?
about 3 to 4 days before you are going to show up for something that you really just have to show up for. Uh-huh. About 3 to 4 days
Hmm.
before you just have to show up for something. But things, that are really elective, I would just recommend just still put those off.
Yeah.
Yeah, until you're
Okay.
vaccinated.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. So I was going to say something about the numbers.
Yes.
So with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, those, they're about 95% effective at preventing diseases across the spectrum. So mild, moderate, or severe disease. So there's a 95% chance that if you come in contact with the virus after receiving one of those two vaccines, that you will not get sick.
You'll just kick it back.
That's right.
Okay.
And the Johnson and Johnson vaccine is about 72% effective against mild and moderate disease, and about 86% effective against severe disease. So that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, and you get that with one dose. So the bottom line is, whichever vaccine is available to you, take it. You're better off, no matter which one of the three you're offered. Take it.
Yeah.
You're still better off.
So if you get the two-shot vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, is there anything special that you need to do in between doses to make sure that you are not, like, can you get sick in between time too, or?
You can still get COVID, because you only get about 50 or 55% immunity after the one dose.
Okay.
So you have just as much a chance of still coming down with the disease after one dose.
Okay.
So half the time you experience or come in contact with COVID after one dose of the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, you will still get the disease. So you definitely need the second dose.
So after dose one, you still need to be treating it as if you haven't had anything until you get second dose.
That's
okay.
Right. That's
Got
right.
It. All right.
The other thing I would remind people about is you don't want to block the inflammatory / immune response by taking anti-inflammatories after you get your vaccine. So you're gonna ache, you're gonna have a headache, you're just gonna, feel generally bad, but don't take Motrin, don't take Aleve, so ibuprofen and naproxen and things in that family. If you have Mobic or Relafin or some of these other diclofenac, some of these other anti-inflammatories, you want to avoid those. Even aspirin.
Okay.
So avoid those for about 2 or 3 days, but you can take Tylenol, just plain acetaminophen. Take acetaminophen for your aches and pains, but don't take anti-inflammatories, because the inflammatory response and the immune response are one and the same. So you need to allow inflammation to let the immune response happen.
Okay. All right, no anti-inflammatories. So you just have to just let it take its course, basically.
Take Tylenol.
Take Tylenol only. Just
take Tylenol.
Yeah.
Soak in a warm tub. Take Tylenol. Actually rest. Give in to the need to rest. Go ahead and do that. And that's it.
We have a hard time with that. No, you're right though. Absolutely. Well, I think we've covered everything. Is there anything else that we should know about the COVID vaccine, or besides get it? Like, I think that's the bottom line, right? Get it if you can. And
get it as soon as you can. Yeah. And continue to just try to, follow the rules of social distancing and masking until at least, 85-90% of the people in the country, are vaccinated. And we're well on the way to that.
When do you anticipate, obviously, you're not God or anything, we don't know when this is going to happen, right? But if you had a crystal ball, what would your prediction be as to how long we got to deal with this still? As far as the lack of vaccinations?
Another 6 to 9 months, I think, will be where we need to be as a country. And then, of course, we're going to have to start it over, because I don't think these vaccines are going to be a one shot, and that's it. I think I think it's going to be like flu, where we have to have them every year. But time will tell on that. We don't know.
Do you see that being a problem with infrastructure, like not having enough COVID vaccines available when it's time to get your flu shot too? Or do you think they'll be settled?
I don't think it's going to be an issue, because the flu vaccine is no longer an issue, because those supply chains and processes are well oiled by now. We know how to do it by now. and we've learned how to do it with this COVID vaccine
Yeah.
really fast. Once we got an actual administration that actually believes in science and actually respects, science and truth, you've seen these supply chains open up. And
It's true. It is
and the
true.
thing about a supply chain is once it gets oiled,
Once
right,
it's moving.
it gets faster and faster and faster.
Mhm.
So this is what we should expect. And this is what's happening. This is what's happening. I think we're saying you got 20 million people vaccinated or somewhere near that.
Mhm.
We're well ahead of schedule of the 100 million in 100 days that we're looking for.
That's the challenge rounds, 100 million in 100 days.
Yeah.
Woo! Well,
yeah. And we're well ahead of schedule on that. We're weeks ahead of schedule on that right now. So
do you administer vaccines, Dad?
I don't administer the vaccines, but I work for the VA, and the VA does have a very well run COVID vaccine program.
What does something like the COVID vaccine mean for our American soldiers who are clearly at a lot higher risk? Like you got the barracks and, deployments and stuff where you have to kind of be in those bunks together. What does this mean for them? And are we getting that to our guys who are overseas right now in deployments as well? Like where are they in line?
Yeah, I don't know because I'm not on that side now. I'm not on the duty side anymore. But if I were to guess, I would think yes. The Army is always the armed services are always the first out on all vaccines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting vaccines that were actually really still experimental when I was a soldier myself.
You did what?
I remember that. Yeah, because again, the risk of the vaccines were far less than the risk of, for example, getting anthrax, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, I think that's all we got for the day. Thank you so much, Dad, for coming and joining Audacity. Yay!
It was a pleasure.
Yes, guys, if you like what you have seen today, make sure you comment, like it, share it, follow us. You can also follow my dad on Instagram. He posts all of his political commentary and his running and his feminism and all that great stuff. So I will be tagging him in this and embarrassing him. But make sure if you like what you're seeing, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. This is available on all of our platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, our website, audacitymagazine.org. Guys, stay maxed up, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.